Welcome to our panel on businesses and getting businesses started. My name is Lianna Kushi. I am with EforAll. We're a nonprofit that helps people just do that, helps people start businesses. Before we jump into the panel, since we're pretty intimate tonight, we thought we'd go around and do introductions. And so maybe I'll start with our guests versus our panelists, and we'll let them go last. And they can, when you, for the panelists, when you introduce yourself, maybe you can introduce yourself, and then also just say in a couple sentences what your business does. So Felice, you wanna kick it off?
Felice Kincannon, as of 5 p.m. today, my affiliation is the Lowell City of Learning.
Awesome. Well, we're lucky to have that. Margaret, would you like to go next?
I'm Peg Shanahan. I'm an almost lifelong resident of Lowell. I had a photography business for about 30 years, which I'm sort of semi-retired from. I had a tough time being a business person in Lowell, I have to say. And I'm looking to Andy and some of the, Elena, Sarah, Cheryl, people that I haven't really met, to hear how you're doing with business in Lowell. I think that Andy might be the grand poobah of businessmen. Is it 15 years now, Andy?
15, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing for a coffee shop, don't you think? Yeah, so I don't know how much I have to add to this, but I'm really interested in listening. And,
awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Madeline?
Hi, I'm Madeline Snow with UMass Lowell Center for Sustainable Production. And I've been working with a lot of businesses, particularly food and beverage folks, about increasing sustainability practices as a business strategy. Thanks.
Awesome. Cheryl?
Hi guys, can you hear me though?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So I know a few of you, or maybe you've met me. So I'm the owner of Bark Avenue Pet Sitting, Dog Walking. And we've been established now in Lowell for over 11 years. And I saw Sarah posted on Facebook to join. And I really felt like this would be a great opportunity for me to see what others in Lowell are doing to help maintain their business and keep it going in the right direction.
Carolyn, 11 years.
I know, 11 years is crazy. I can't even believe it.
Carolyn?
Hi there, my name is Carolyn McCarthy. I work for the UMass Lowell Climate Change Initiative, and I'm really interested in hearing the conversation. Thank you.
Awesome, welcome. And James?
Hi, I'm James Ostis. I work in Senator Kennedy's office as a legislative director, and I'm on the City of Learning committee, so wanted to show support for as many of the events this week as possible.
Awesome.
Always good, and I saw Andy a few hours ago, so.
All right, and for our panelists this evening, I'm very excited to share that we have Sarah from the Social Pup, Elena from Purple Carrot, and Andy from Brew'd Awakening. So Sarah, how about you kick us off with who you are and your business in a few sentences.
Sure. So I'm Sarah. I own the Social Pup in Lowell on Jackson Street. I've been open for 6.5 years now. And yeah, I'm also a vet tech, so I have I've been working with animals most of my life.
Awesome. Elena?
I'm Elena from Purple Carrot Bread Company. We're on Merrimack Street on the corner of Merrimack and John Street. April was 2 years, so we're going on almost 3, I guess. I think we'll blink and it'll be there. We started at farm markets, and now we have a cafe, and we do soup, salads, sandwiches on our breads. That's about it.
Awesome. And Andy?
Hi, I'm Andy from Brew'd Awakening Coffeehaus. I'll apologize in advance. You might hear 2 of Sarah's customers, Simba and Weiler, barking every now and then. Weiler also has a secondary job. He's our HR person at Brew'd. So he handles all of our employee issues. But yeah, we've been 15 years, coffee shop. We roast our own coffee. We got teas and smoothies and etc. and sandwiches, and we're located on Market Street.
What was your motivation for starting Brew'd Awakening?
Back then, many years ago, I was actually looking to try to start a nonprofit organization that was working with job training and development. And it was going to have a profit side and a nonprofit side, where the nonprofit offered job training, and then the profit side was going to be a coffee shop where I would have the participants in the training have some on-hand work experience. But through a number of different personal issues, feeling comfortable asking people for startup donations, etc. I sort of scrapped the nonprofit end of it and just decided, you can still be very community focused and still be a good community member by just having a coffee shop. And I obviously always loved the idea of the coffee shop. So I ended up just sort of focusing on that. And 15 years later, I'm still here.
How about you, Elena? What was your motivation for Purple Care, or your and Doug's motivation?
So I'm from Lowell, but Doug's from Worcester. And when we moved in together, we lived above a bakery dispenser. And so we're used to getting fresh bread every day or every week or whatever. And we moved up this way. He's like, so where do you get fresh bread? And I remember being like, for like 20 minutes, like going through all the towns that I know, and I couldn't think of a single place that sold bread. And I was like, nowhere. And so then he started making it at home, and he was, had a Dutch oven, and he's like, here, try this. And I'm like, this is really good bread. So we ended up going to mill number 5, and I cut up a bunch of bread and gave it to vendors at the market. And the next week I was selling bread. And that's literally how we got started.
Wow. Awesome. That's great. And how about you, Sarah?
So I mentioned I was a vet tech, and I am on the board of an organization that goes to the Dominican Republic to do spays and neuters. And on my first trip, came home with a dog. And even though I said I'd never, ever adopt a dog from there, I adopted 2. So Skippy, I had Skippy, and finding somewhere for him when I worked 40 hours a week, I realized very quickly that there was nothing in Lowell that dealt with animals at all. Like, there was no pet stores, there was nothing. So this kind of just happened where my family owns the building, and the tenant had vacated, and my mother was trying to find a new tenant, and I just kind of pitched the idea to her, and she's like, you know what, if you come back and you can get the money and you can get the business plan going, try it. So I just kept working on it. It took me about a year to come up with the business plan and the financing, and pitching it to bank after bank after bank, and finally opened. And it took a little bit, and I was a little nervous, but here I am 6.5 years later, and still trudging along. More dogs. I have 4 dogs and 4 cats and my bearded dragon.
Awesome. Oh wait, those are what the pets you have?
Those are the pets I have. I have a lot of clients. We have a lot of dogs that come here. Get to see a lot of cool dogs, and a lot of them I treat like my own dogs. So it's kind of fun to come into work and have like 30 pets.
Awesome. Well, and you kind of alluded to this already. You were jumping into my second question. I think starting a business for many folks is kind of like a mystery. Like, how do you get started? What do you do? And you shared that your mother happened to have a building with some space, but you still had to go and get some funding for it. Can you talk a little bit about just that process of like, you put this business plan together, you got funding, like, can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. So initially, I had no idea where to start. So I went to the bank that I had been banking at, and they said I needed a business plan. No idea how to do that. So I went to Merrimack Valley Small Business Center, and they had classes, and they were pretty cheap. I think it was like $50 for a 6-week course on how to do it. And just, they took you step by step by step through it. It was really nice. And then they read it and kind of manipulated it to fit what I needed to do. And then it was just a matter of going to every single bank in Lowell and trying to find someone that saw what I saw, which is there was a need, there was nothing. And I think that was the biggest thing, is nobody could really wrap their mind around how there's so many dogs and so many families with dogs in Lowell, and yet nothing existed in Lowell. You can go to Chelmsford, Dracut, Tewksbury, you know, all the surrounding communities, but nothing in Lowell.
And how did you, so obviously it sounds like lots of people said no. How did you convince someone to say yes?
I think I was at the 8th bank meeting it was Lowell Bank, which has been Sage Bank and now Salem 5. And I met with a bank branch manager there, and I showed him the figures, and I had a list of every dog license in Lowell and the ASPCA numbers on how many, the average person that had it. And I knew everything that I had written down in my business plan, back, forwards. He asked me like how much I planned to make by 6 months, a year, 6 years out. And I knew it. And he was pretty impressed that I had it, and I knew it backwards and forwards. And he said he Googled it and looked around and saw that was potentially there, and was willing to work with me. And I had to do a lot of legwork in terms of securing that loan, but I was able to do it. So it didn't just happen. Took a while, but
yeah, that's
finally
great.
finding someone to believe in you is pretty amazing.
Yeah. How about you, Elena? Can you talk a little bit? You shared the samples at mill number 5, and that's how you kicked things off. But what happened after that, and how do you go from that markets to opening a storefront on Merrimack Street?
Well, I think that I didn't have as hard of a time to find information, because I did go through EforAll, and I learned, you know, how to get from point A to point B. But before EforAll and after we started selling at Mill 5, it's hard to explain, but we're not risk takers. And I know that doesn't sound right, because we opened a business and that's risky, but for us to just jump into something is risky. And we didn't do that. We took the time to do farm markets, to learn our customers, to, you know, maybe we didn't have a business plan, but we were working the other end of it, which was our customer segments and all that other stuff that you need to know. And just growing as a company and really educating people in the community about bread, because most people are used to Wonder Bread, and that's not really bread. So it took time to build that I guess relationship in the community around us. And then it was like we had all the right things for product, but we didn't know how to go from selling a product to having a storefront and all the stuff that comes with that. And that's where EforAll came along and was able to, like, I could ask questions and get answers for those types of understanding, and then the homework and all that stuff that we do just to learn how to grow as a company. And I think I told David Parker when we interviewed, I said, I have a pretty window dressing, but I don't have anything behind the window. I don't know how to make the business a business. That's where you come in. So we definitely did a lot of growing and a lot of learning through the EforAll program on what was needed to open a business.
And then did you need funding to open your storefront, or what was that process like?
So we looked through the LDFC. Is a program that helps small business. The requirement is that you open in downtown, and they work with you. They help you. Like, I had to change my business plan from 18 months to 24 months. And I had to do a few tweaking things for the banks. But basically, instead of one bank lending you money, through the LDFC, like 3 or 4 banks will loan money in small amounts so that it's less of a risk for anybody. And then they work with you it's like a contractor's loan. So you go and I'm going to go buy 16 chairs for the dining room. It costs this much. They cut you a check, you buy the chairs. So it's like, it's a loan as you go, I guess. And that is really how we opened. We had a lot of equipment to begin with, a lot of small wares. We didn't have a big oven and we didn't have a space. So a lot of the money went into that. And we just kind of went from there.
Awesome. All right. I know it was 15 years ago, but can you talk a little bit, Andy, how did you get started? How did you find the place? Did you have to get money to start the business?
Yep. So right off the bat, once I knew that I was doing this, I was working on my business plan before I located Spot. So I had my business plan going. I did a lot of interviews. I went to Somerville and Haverhill and different coffee shops around the state, just sort of sitting with them, asking questions about, looking at their finances and everything. So once I had my business plan together, I started narrowing my choices down to really 3 cities at that point. 4, actually. It was Haverhill, Lawrence, Lowell, and Methuen, because I was living in Methuen at the time. I slowly took cities off. Methuen just really had no downtown. The Loop wasn't even the Loop at that point. Lawrence just really was not anything ready to. I think the mayor then, Michael Sullivan? I think he was just still trying to pave roads in Lawrence going through the center. So nothing really there. Haverhill, when talking to different store owners there, just didn't really give me a good vibe and didn't really like the straightness of it. So then really coming to Lowell, they were looking to do a lot of different things. They were trying to, this was sort of in the revitalization time frame. UMass Lowell was building up and Middlesex was there. So I really started focusing on that. Found a spot at the former Burke department store. So once I really looked at that, then I tried to obviously funding, and right off the bat, starting a coffee shop, restaurant, anything food oriented, you really can't get loans from the traditional bank nor from small business association. So really a lot of that is, you look at programs like the city offers, maybe like LDFC, or you fund the money yourself. Well, unfortunately for me, LDFC did not give me a loan because they just got burnt by the coffee shop that Higher Grounds that was in the former spot where Life Alive is now. So they didn't really have huge, high, what's the word I'm looking for? Okay. They didn't really like the ideas of coffee shops. They didn't think it was going to work, especially given what they went through. So for me, it really just came to going to my 401k, taking money out there, and credit card and a home equity loan, because I had my house in Methuen at the time. So I did all that, and really that's where my funding came from and started it. And then obviously, slowly, hope that my business plan was, somewhat accurate in regards with everything. In the end, I did do a deed in lieu of foreclosure. So I basically gave my house back to the bank, said, here's the keys. Thank you very much. Found an apartment in Lowell. I did go into credit card debt and into one of those programs that consolidates and that you pay off. So, it took a while, about a good 6-7 years to get my credit back to some value again. But, in the end now, I bought another house. I'm out of all credit card debt and everything's paid back and I have good credit again. So, so in the end it worked, but it was definitely a fun first many years, with, just trying to scrounge whatever money I can, taking out money from my IRAs and stuff wherever I could, friends helping me out. So yeah, I'm in a much better position though now.
So you also kind of jumped into the next question, I think, maybe without realizing it, is sort of what was that expectation of what it meant to be a business owner or have a coffee shop or a bakery or the Social Pup with doggy daycare? Is that like the right? Or
Yeah.
It's more than that, but like your image of being that business owner versus the reality. Like,
for me, you know, so again, just going back to my business plan, I was kind of looking at it as that, you know, within 3 years, I was hoping to make, you know, that was my break even point. And I looked at that, and I would have to say, overall, I think I might have been a year off. I don't think UMass really took off as quickly as I was expecting it. And maybe I think as quickly as the city was expecting it at first. So there weren't a lot, the student population wasn't as big. From a high school perspective, you know, I didn't realize the whole phenomenon, you know, well, I knew it, but I didn't realize that the Dunkin' phenomenon really was going to be such a huge factor where everyone does tend to go there. So I mean, for me, I think it took a little bit longer, but I would say overall, I was breaking even probably in about 3.5 years in. I might have had to put a little bit money in again here and there to cover like maybe a winter month or two. But I would have to say my expectations were fairly good, at least through the business plan side, you know, then there's the hiring side and all that stuff, which is always a fun, you know, I tend to always find a bunch of good employees, and then I think the expectations are changing and are slightly lowered over the past maybe 5 years versus
yes.
when I first started.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sarah, what would you say was your, you know, vision of what it meant to be a business owner versus the day-to-day, or, you know?
Well, I mean, I expected it to be very tough, which it was, and I expected to be very much in debt, which I'm working my way out of, but
it's possible to get out. You see,
yes,
Andy is your example.
I was fairly on point with a lot of my business plan in terms of growth. What I wasn't expecting was the turnover rate for residents around here. We tend to lose a lot of clients. They tend to stick around especially the condos around here, about a year, maybe 2, and then they're gone. Which, I mean, we get new dogs in, but it's a big turnover, which is interesting and sad. I mean, we lose a lot of clients that we like. And then the biggest thing for me was the pay cut. I took a big pay cut from managing an animal hospital to, you know, my own business. I'm putting in more hours and earning less money, but that will change. And I was, you know, I had hoped to expand by probably year 4. And I was about a year behind. I had been starting to look for an expansion last year, and been trying to look for a second location, somewhere that I could do overnights, training, bigger facility. We're kind of outgrowing the facility that we have. I still want to stay in downtown, but I kind of want to have more land and add more services, and had a couple opportunities. One was right in January, right before Corona hit, and luckily for me, the financing didn't come through from the bank in time, and someone else bought it, because I would have been totally screwed. A big mortgage that I could not have paid. But you know, now it's just about rebuilding and staying open, but I think a lot of it, like Andy said, the employees, I was not prepared for that. I I mean, I managed a practice, but that's, you know, different than owning your own business and dealing with employee issues day to day and dealing with all of the problems that come with a business. I have much more respect for my prior bosses that own their own companies than when I worked there.
And how about you, Elena? Your expectations for you and Doug being business owners and the reality.
I have to say that I'm very happy with my expectations to really entrench ourselves in the community were spot on. The community has really helped small business get through these tough times. So I would say that that's right on point. I knew I would have to do a lot of hard work, and I was not wrong about that. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of, you know, not paying ourselves yet. And there's a lot of debt that we have to get through. But I'd say the employee part is definitely a big challenge. It's more of a challenge after the pandemic hit. But I would say, as far as like our business plan and all that, things are pretty steady. Like, it's hard to predict what's going to happen day to day, but we were very conservative when we did our business plan about numbers, and we exceeded that, you know, our projections. And so I feel like overall there isn't so much shock value that we're way off. But as far as, I would say, again, the biggest challenge has been employees and just getting to a point. I know we're still young, but getting to a point where we can at least like start the day, bake the bread, and maybe take a couple hours off to, like, I don't know, go to breakfast or be a couple.
Grab a coffee at Brew'd.
Yeah. You know, it's just, we're not there yet. And there's long hours, but, you know, we get lots of rave reviews. People love our food. People are calling us, and, you know, I went to a dinner party and they had your bread. So, like, all that kind of stuff kind of makes up for the being really tired and going through this tough time. But I'd say for the most part, most expectations were within range. I mean, there's some things you can't prepare for until you go through it. And that's a lot of things in life, but, you know, so owning a small business is definitely not for people who don't want to work.
So you alluded to this a little, and this is going to be this will be my last question for now, and then I want to open it up to make sure folks get a chance to ask their burning questions of the three of you. But we're in a global pandemic, and I've heard you guys talk a little bit about it. Starting with you, Elena. I mean, talk about when it hit, how you responded, and how you're doing now.
As with anything, something happens, and I don't know if you guys know on your phone that little emoji with the eyes that are really wide. That's me. When something bad happens, I go, what am I going to do? I kind of just sit and wait to see what's going to happen. And, you know, Doug and I came in when they said that everything was shutting down, but we could stay open because we were essential. And, you know, we came up with some ideas, and the biggest thing, and I'm sure all of you have heard me talk about it, but the take and bakes really saved our lives. They definitely dwindled in June and July. July was a little scary, but it got us through March, February, you know, March, April, May, and part of June. That's what kept us at the normal amount of low for our sales, because we went from about 150 transactions a day to 30 overnight. So we had to drive up the check average and make each sale count. And this is where community pulled through, because I started posting on Merrimack Valley Eats, and I quickly after that joined In and Around Lowell. That kind of started after the pandemic. I post in Lowell live feed form, even though it wasn't a food group. and I just got the word out there. I was like, I don't know if we're gonna make it. Like, I need to know what you want. And you know, we did the take and bake meals, the family size, couple size, and it, you know, I told anyone that I talked to that owned a small business, I told them to do the same thing. I talked to Panella, I talked to Big Pokey, I talked to a bunch of the different places, and I said, if you can not be stuck in your path and reinvent yourself, not totally, but do a quick pivot, you will make it through this. You just have to have faith in that. And it's hard, but that's what we did, and we're constantly evaluating, even now. Take and Bake's dropped off for the summer, but they're starting to pick back up, so we're going to revamp the menu. Our biggest season is coming up. Thanksgiving is huge for us. We're going to do meal kits and dinner kits for Thanksgiving, and pies. Pies are huge. So I think those types of ideas of thinking outside the box, and what in your wheelhouse can you change to bring more people in and to offer a service that maybe they didn't have. And it's something that might be specific because of the pandemic, whatever it is. But that's how we are getting through this. But it's not a walk in the park, that's for sure.
Yeah. Andy, how about things at Brew'd?
So, you know, starting like really at the beginning of March, obviously started noticing changes in people's patterns. I was already concerned about, you know, staffing, and already cut down a little hours, and then really then Baker's announcement about, you know, cutting things down more, you know, allowing us to sort of change things. So at that point, I already gave to my employees that some things might have to happen. And at that point, I did make the decision. I furloughed about 60% of my staff. I kept really those that can open and close. So in case anybody went down, so the store. Also, I like, instead of closing at 9 p.m., we started closing at 3 p.m. And it was, I mean, it was definitely, I was still working, of course. There was no such thing as quarantining in my books, but you know, it was interesting to see how quiet the downtown was, and closing at 3 o'clock when normally, you know, I'm going home, we're still open. But you know, we did that for 1 month. And at that point in April, we did receive our PPP loan. So that was good. For that month of March, you know, we went from, you know, our sales did drop. I would probably say we saw about a 55% drop in sales on a given, on a given day. And then in April, you know, I got the PPP. So now I needed to give all my employees. So I brought everyone back on. We opened back up and did our full hours again, just because I needed to, you know, I needed the hours to pay people. I wasn't going to just pay 5-6 people just to stand around at the store at the same time, especially when we were trying to social distance and everything. So we went back, opened up till 9. You know, and, you know, the sales style, we're picking up a little bit as well. We did, from a product perspective, you know, we did take some stuff off of the menu that were some of our slower items. So we weren't stocking up on those items. And, you know, if I ran out, you know, I would run out of something. You know, in the good days, I would make that run to Restaurant Depot, you know, right after work to go get it, because I knew that it was a big seller and I didn't want to lose the sales the next time someone tried to order it. You know, at this time it was, you know, I'm not making the run to Restaurant Depot. If we're out of it, we're out of it. So that was for, you know, really from April, end of May, June, we did start seeing again, things started picking up a little bit. More people are out about, you know, at that point, the restaurants were able to offer outdoor seating. So that definitely helped. You know, I continued just to manage that. Our PPP, given the time that we were in the first phase and we got it right away, by the time they switched the rules to 8-week to a 24-week period, you know, my PPP was done. So I already used up all that money for, you know, I did about 90% on staffing and then the remaining for utilities and stuff. So, you know, so I didn't really have any opportunity to get, you know, to extend that PPP. So I kept everybody. Sales started to pick up a little bit, you know, and what I did was, you know, I did have to lower, you know, usually the employees get 35 hours a week during the summer. You know, it's an unpredictable time. Each day is different from the last week. So a Monday this week is completely different from the Monday last week, which was different from the week before. I could have been up 1 week. I could be down 1 week. Today, for example, I was down 20% over last Friday. No rhyme or reason. So, you know, we have to sort of take that into consideration. And my staffing is down a little bit. You know, instead of the 35 hours, they're at 25 hours. So, you know, so for the loss of sales, which now I do have to say has been better. You know, overall for the year, I'm down about 12%, but you know, that's $40,000, $45,000. So I have to figure out how to make that up. So I'm trying, and I've been doing fairly well where every dollar in sales lost, I have to try to find that in a cost perspective and try to reduce those costs by that same amount. And, you know, so hours is one, you know, not replenishing on some products right away from a food perspective is another, you know, holding off on, you know, some equipment and, you know, marketing. I cut Uber, which was a huge cost. You know, I cut down on some marketing and got rid of Yelp, and wherever I could save money, I was doing. And, you know, right now, I will have to say I'm in good shape. I mean, I do feel bad, obviously, for my friends who own a lot of the restaurants. But you know, I'm probably right now I'm a little under, but I'm only under like 4K and that was just because of payroll today. So I'm almost at break even, and if I can break even through this, then I'm happy and still be able to pay and keep all my employees. So. Yeah, it's a constant, you know, constant monitoring and everything. You know, I haven't been able to go on my vacations because I don't know if this Saturday is going to be hugely busy, where last Saturday might have been, you know, really slow. So,
yeah. Thank you. Sarah, how about you? How's it been, and how was it when it started, and how's it been?
So when it started, beginning of March, we definitely started noticing a slowdown in business. Some of our regulars weren't coming so often. So when we get the news that there was a quote, you know, that the state was being shut down, it wasn't really a shock. So the funny thing about my business being daycare and grooming is no one really had the answer as to whether or not I was essential, not essential, somewhere in between. The health department was like, make your best decision. But, you know, I was like, okay. So we decided that, you know, just based on sales and figuring that most of our clients were going to be home, since if you're working from home, you're not really needing to go out to drop your dog at daycare. We closed for 2 weeks and we'd see how it goes. And then as I started looking into, you know, when I could reopen, it got worse and more involved. And I started asking around, and they're like, well, you can open the daycare, but you can't open grooming. Well, the calls that I were getting from customers were for grooming. You know, at first it was a little bit, and a lot of people were staying home. And then it was like 30 calls a day on our voicemail about grooming. And I was being told by the state, you can't open the grooming shop. You can open the daycare. So it was kind of the back and forth where I knew if I opened daycare, I wouldn't be able to afford to stay open just because the staffing, I would need to pay my staff, and I wouldn't be able to make the kind of money that I would need to pay all of the bills. I did kind of blow through some of my savings when we reopened back in May, because we still weren't allowed to open grooming. But at that point, I think we were going a little stir crazy. But I had also lost all of my staff except for one person in daycare. The other people had either moved home because they were students and they weren't staying in Lowell anymore, or they moved on to different jobs. So it's unfortunate I lost some really great staff members to different things. So we started opening with daycare, and it was very slow. It was like we were brand new. You know, we'd have a day that we'd have 3 dogs for daycare, and we're like, woohoo! And the word started getting out, and people started slowly coming back in, but definitely doing, we had to do curbside, so no one's allowed inside. We're still doing that as per the governor mandate. When we were finally able to open the grooming, I had a list of probably 150 names of everybody that wanted to come in 1 week. So that was a little difficult with the grooming mandate that they created. They actually created a very extensive plan for groomers to reopen, where you could only have one person in the area at one time. You couldn't start a dog and stop a dog. The way we did it just wasn't going to be feasible. So we had to rearrange our entire layout for grooming, our schedule for groomers. We had to change how we booked people, give extra time to clean between dogs, because at that time they still weren't sure if dogs spread it from humans to, to dogs, or if we would spread it to the dogs and give it to their owners. So it was costly, time consuming. We weren't as busy as I would have liked to have been because we just couldn't book as much as we could have. Our clients, for the most part, were fantastic. I had people reaching out to me when we were closed saying, can I buy a package from you? We know you're closed. We know your business isn't doing well. People reaching out going, you know what, my dog doesn't need like regular grooming. Clients saying, my dog's okay. Why don't you get somebody else in that needs it more? Because what a lot of people don't know, if they don't have dogs that need grooming regularly, is that a lot of people wait over the winter and don't get their dogs groomed December, January, February. So they start coming in around March, April, May are my 3 busiest months. That's where I do probably, I'd say, a quarter of my business in 2 months for the year, especially in grooming. We have, it's always slammed for Easter, just that whole time, because we have the shave downs. We have winter dogs coming, all the dogs needing to have their coats redone and whatnot. So to have those dogs come in now in June, July, August, they're heavily matted, they've got skin disease. Some people were referring to vets. So it was a little tough. It was tough on our clients. It was tough on the groomers. It was tough on the staff. But we're hanging in. We're still not where we should be. I was hoping to be back to our normal hours by this time, and it's looking maybe like November or December that we open our regular hours. I was hoping to be fully staffed, but we're still not. We're staffed for the hours that I have, but I'm still working about 60 hours a week, just trying to be here and make sure everything runs smoothly. And we're not where we are in terms of the normal amount of dogs that we have during the day pre-COVID. But post-COVID, I always kind of like, it doesn't matter what we did pre-COVID because the rules went out of the window. Like everybody in my industry is just suffering. So I look at it as every day we're getting a little better. This Friday was our best Friday since. So next, it just keeps growing. It's crazy. But if you looked at my books, you'd say this is a really slow Friday for us for the year. So if that makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for, sharing and being open about how you started, the struggles. What questions do folks have for Andy, Elena, or Sarah? Go ahead, please. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Yep. I actually have 2 questions, but I'll just ask ask the first one first. Can you all address customer care and, you know, the good customers and the not so good customers and how you deal with them? And probably more importantly, how do you train your staff to address customers? Elena?
For me, I kind of have a zero bullying tolerance level. So if you're upset because you had a bad meal or something happened or your food wasn't good, I'm all about you. I have no problem. I'm so sorry. Let me get you another one. But if in that process you're mean or you come in and you start mean, I am assertive. And I tell my staff to come get me because I'm always here. I want my staff to be empowered to stand up for themselves, but to be nice to the customers too. So it's a balance. And I know, you know, from working with abused kids for so many years, I know that I'm always teaching. So they're looking to see how I react to a certain thing. And, you know, basic problems with the food, absolutely. I'm the first person to make sure that we comp the meal or we get you a new one, or, you know, you tell us what happened, I'm so sorry, you know, here's a gift card for next time, whatever it needs to be. And I teach the staff that as well, as far as those types of problems. We've been really fortunate. We haven't had a lot of difficult customers. I haven't had anyone refuse to wear a mask. I've had to tell a few people, hey, you know, you need to put a mask on, but they go right out and do it. I don't have any issues with that. So for the most part, people have been really good. I haven't had to have a lot of issues with that kind of thing, especially during the pandemic. That's just me.
Andy, how about you?
I mean, it's very similar. You know, if something's wrong with, if you don't like your food or your drink, you know, I'm fine with that. And, you know, I tell my employees, if someone comes up and says that, you know, great, just offer them if they want something else or if they want their money back. You know, it's whatever makes the customer happy in the end is all that matters. You know, I wish more people would just, you know, use their voice and come up and say, hey, you know, I didn't really care for this drink or this food. And we, again, like I just said, we would do exactly that, comp you, give you the money back, or make you something that you might like. You know, so we have no problems with that, and we try to keep that. You know, I tell my employees, you know, be friendly, you know, be nice to the customer, respect the customer. You know, if they are being disrespectful, then you're obviously more than able to say something. Just, you know, try to be as nice as you can and get them out of the store before anything ensues. You know, the other things are really like, you know, the Yelp reviews, the Google reviews. I've learned now, you know, I can't respond to all of those. You know, I just have to say, I wish customers would just, again, if they're not happy with something, just come up and we can get it and resolved and a lot quicker. Once you write something on Yelp or Google, you know, it is what it is. You know, you're mad at something. Yes, you might, you know, the employee might have had a bad day. I might have had a bad day. The customer might have had a bad day, and, you know, something just didn't click right. You know, it happens. We're not, no one's robots. We're all human. We have emotions. No one can expect everyone to be, you know, a happy, chipper person 24/7. I wish, you know, if we could, then life would be great, I guess, for everybody. But, you know, just let people know, you know, just let us know what, you know, if something's wrong, and we'll help you out. But, you know, we have those experiences. Again, it's more hearing things through Yelp or Google or something like that. I've had employees who have done stupid things that have disrespected customers, And if I hear about it, then I definitely will apologize and then let my employees know that that was wrong, etc. And then I've had difficult customers who nothing about food or drinks, but just in the store, just not being respectful to employees or other customers, and I've had to deal with folks that way. But if I'm not there and it's something is going to get really blown up, we have the non-emergency number for the police, and I allow my employees, if they feel really unsafe and uncomfortable, then to use it, because I can't always be there. And sometimes it's more than just being able to say, hey, we do need to ask you to leave. So, but ultimately, we want to make sure the customer comes in and has a good experience. And that's what everybody's goal is, from, mine, Elena's, and Sarah's, and Cheryl's, etc., down, all the businesses, Lowell and beyond.
And Sarah, you have human customers and canine customers.
Well, I don't have too many complaints from the canine customers, unless they're getting baths, and then I get, grumpy or something like that. Or
Sarah,
I get kills. There you go, Weiler. Hi, Weiler. With Simba. Crazy. And I train my employees really well on how to deal with our canine customers, so that we have cameras always watching, and I'm usually always here. So I don't really worry too much about that. My staff is very confident with our canines. With our humans, for the most part, I haven't had too many issues. It's usually the grooming clients that have the biggest problems, because if you have a dog that is completely matted or a mess, it's really hard to make that dog look pretty and fluffy and long, and you can't spend. So we have a policy where, if we have the groomer come out on every groom and talk to the client and see what their expectations are. If their expectations are not going to be met, we tell them right away. We want to be as nice but as blunt as possible, so that they're understanding that this is how it's going to be, so that they're not shocked when they come back and their dog is completely naked and bald. Now, sometimes we can luck out and not make them naked and bald, and people love us for that. But on the rare occasion that we've had issues, if it's too short, too long, if it's something I can fix or groomers can fix, happy to fix it. I tell my clients they have 24 hours to call me with problems. We'll fix it for free. I'll try to get them a new groom. Maybe refund the groom or do a free groom the next day or something like that. Try to work with them, try to make them happy. I don't want to send anybody home with a bad impression of us. We try to kill people with kindness. And then, but I do have a fairly strict policy with my employees that if they are feeling threatened, or if someone, there's been a few occasions where people have been not nice to my employees, and whether they feel that they're justified in doing so, they're immediately fired as clients, because I don't need that. I don't need that stress. And I've told my employees that if they are uncomfortable and I'm not here, that, again, non-emergency line for the police to call them. We haven't had to do that, but it's not something that I'm willing to put up with. Is bullying for my employees. Bully me, yell at me. Okay, fine. It's just gonna go right over my head and roll off me, and I'm gonna be mad for a minute and then walk away and think of something else. But a few times I've had issues with my employees where former customers have been more than obnoxious, and then the Irish comes out in me and I get a little angry. And if I'm here, it's not pleasant, but it's justified. And sometimes I do tend to, if I know that that's going to be an issue, I tend to create my communication with them in email form, so that there's no emotion. And then I belong to a Facebook group of local of animal business owners that review. It's called Tactful Responses to Animal Businesses, and review my response and make sure it's tactful. I've had to do that on more than one occasion.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I know we're getting close to 7, and I know, Elena, you do have to get going. And I know it's Friday night, and so hopefully we all have some wild parties at home planned. But how about some last words of advice? You know, what advice would you offer to someone who wants to embark on the journey of becoming a business owner, being an entrepreneur? How about, Elena, we'll start with you, some last words of advice or wisdom, and then we'll go to Sarah and then Andy.
I think you need to surround yourself with people who will tell you the truth. And don't be stuck or, married to one thought process or one goal. Be ready to pivot, be ready to grow, and be ready to listen to your peers. If you're asking for advice or you seem lost and they're giving the advice, start to really process that and see if it fits with your business model, and grow as a company. Because if you just stay stuck in your mold, you can't pivot and you can't survive the ever-changing pandemic world that we're in.
Thank you. Andy?
I in the 15 years, I have seen so many businesses, especially in the downtown. Many survived, a lot survived, and many have failed. And I would say that the biggest reason I think many have failed it's the lack of understanding of what it takes to own a business, and the lack of a business plan. Too many people, I think, say, hey, just looking at restaurants, I love cooking, so I'm going to open up a restaurant. I'm going to put all my money in it, and I love cooking, but they don't understand anything about the business aspect, the financial aspect. And in the end, within 3 months, they sunk all their money and savings into it, and then they're out of business. So the successful ones, they do the research. You go out, you talk to people, you find out what it takes to own that type of business model you want to do. Look at the costs, make those projections, talk to people in the area that you're looking to start the business, and see what the clientele is really like, and have a good, do your homework before putting in, what could be all of your money that you own into it, and, put a business plan. And as like Elena said, it's a living document. It can change, it might not change in your first 5 years, but it could change. Your model might have to shift because of something like COVID, or, maybe the demographics in your business district have changed. So, learn to try to be flexible and change it at the same time if you want to succeed.
Thank you. And Sarah, what's your words of wisdom, piece of advice?
I mean, Andy pretty much covered everything there. I just say, be prepared to be poor for a very long time, to put all of your heart and soul into something, and be prepared for a lot of people to say no, that this isn't going to work, that's not right, and just keep trucking at it. And if you have a solid business plan, a solid action plan, and like they said, be prepared to kind of change that around if you need to, and manipulate it to what your present circumstances are. That's huge. And, I think, if I could go back to myself 6 years ago and say, realize that you're not going to have a life for a while until you get it off. And every time you think you're there, just remember that you're the only one that loves your business the way you love your business. You're the only one that cares about it the way you care about it. I can tell my employees till I'm blue in the head, to do something, and they're awesome, and they're but I can see things that are like, oh, there's a little, they left dust there, or this is, this should be over here. And it's not me micromanaging. It's just, I see everything on my business all the time. And I can't expect that of everyone that I work with. I have some fantastic employees that work for me right now, great groomers, but they don't own it. I do. So I have to make sure that ultimately the success or failure of my business relies on me. And I don't think I was quite prepared for not owning a business beforehand. And now I'm quite well aware of that.
Thank you for joining this panel, this festival of learning. And we're just grateful, and have a wonderful weekend, everybody.